I want to welcome everybody to our first in the seed planting series, which is a workshop series we thought would be a really nice value add for our community and for a lot of our residents and clients. This is a great opportunity for us to get to know our community and touch on a topic that is top of mind for a lot of folks, especially right now as we look at our local real estate market in the weirdest year ever. We thought we'd add some guidance and tips on what we've learned over the last decade and plus on how to buy a home and what to think through when doing that. So I'm going to have you forward the slide. I've got a really great team here to help me do this presentation and walk you through some of our best practices. Steph Wicko is our Senior VP on the Nest side, which manages individual rentals. Chelsea is the VP of Roos DC, which manages condos and co-ops throughout the city. Our general counsel is Pavan Kuchandani, who is really stellar at helping understand and navigate all the legal and regulatory issues that impact both single-family housing and co-ops and cooperatives and condos. And then Jason's our director of client experience and on the Roos side, and has an exceptionally good background on how to understand all the moving parts and nuances of being in a multi-unit building. All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the DC real estate trends. Oh, and I'm Lisa Wise. I'm the CEO, or Chief Flockster, as I like to be called. And it's really super fun to be here. I want to point out that one of the reasons why we're presenting this is because we get a lot of questions about home buying, and we study the real estate market quite a bit, but we don't actually sell property and we have no intention of selling property. So one of the nice things about offering this particular presentation is that we have nothing to sell. We're not interested in being a real estate agent because that's not what we do. But we do have what we might call a bird's eye view into how this industry unfolds. And there are a lot of kind of tips and tricks for how to think through and navigate buying a home in this area, in the DMV area. And we'll focus mostly on the District of Columbia, but a lot of the guidance that we'll give you would be applicable in any market with some things that are very unique to DC. DC real estate trends right now, the city is on fuego when it comes to sales. We've seen things flying off the shelf when it comes to home buying. The trends are uniquely different for both houses and condos. Obviously, we're all feeling a lot more restricted in our ability to move through life. So home is kind of everything right now. And we're seeing that houses are selling more quickly than any other inventory right now. And housing pricing is going up as well. There are a lot of competitive bids when we see houses go up on the market, and the need to have a really smart real estate team on your side. And we're going to address the kind of team you'll need to make sure that when you're ready or at that place where you want to buy something, you know you've got the right guidance and professionals to help you get through that. If you need to sell something to buy something, that can be tricky. If you have any other issues that are impacting your ability to have a transition move quickly or a transaction move quickly, we recommend that you kind of do as much advanced planning as possible so that any offer that you make doesn't get snagged up in a contingency like needing to sell something and or other issues that might emerge that would turn off a potential seller. This is what we would call a seller's market, meaning there's an abundance of buyers and there are not enough homes in inventory to satisfy the demand. It's a little bit different on the condo and cooperative side. We're finding and seeing that one-bedroom units that are for sale in the DC market are not moving very quickly. And I think that that would make sense. If everybody's looking for a home office, then a one-bedroom unit is not going to fit that bill. And again, people are looking for more space right now. The other thing to factor in as you look at the condo and cooperative model is that, and this may not be relevant in the moment, but it will be relevant going forward as you look at a home buying decision. There are 42,000 rentals or units coming online in the DMV in the next 36 months. All of those will compete with any rentals and might even compete with potential buyers down the line. So if you're interested in buying a condo and one day having that condo become a rental, it will be impacted by the amount of inventory that we're expecting to come into the district. And we have lots of new condos being delivered in the district as well. I tend to think that they're aiming to build 1 unit per person. We do see that there are some issues with price lowering in the condo and co-op market, which means that it's possible that things are slowing a little bit. and inventory is lower on both. A lot of people in March decided not to put their houses on the market with lack of clarity around what the future would look like. But DC, again, tends to be a strong economy compared to the rest of the country, and we're enjoying the fruits of that scenario right now, and especially the real estate world. So we'll advance to the next slide. All right, so during our short time together, and we had a really hard time like honing in on exactly the right things to share with you all, we want to walk you through how to focus your time and attention when it comes to buying a home. First of all, you want to target the right purchase. So it's really important not to get your heart on something, you're set on something before you have a plan for what home ownership looks like for you and your family. You want to understand ahead of time before you get really attached to that perfect unit, whether you want a house, whether you're a condo person, whether a cooperative might be a good fit for you. And you have to consistently think about what your 2, 3, 5, and even 10-year plan is. And you'll notice that's a theme throughout this presentation. It's easy to fall in love with a unit today, but you'll be stuck with that unit for more than a few days. And so you have to think long and hard about how you can purpose that unit going forward. You never want to be stuck with a property that you're not sure what to do with. So you want to make sure any decision that you make offers some opportunity for you to hedge depending on what's going on with the economy and what's happening with you personally. Before you go out and start shopping, you want to know what you can afford and who you need to help you determine that. So we recommend you get your financial house in order. You get all your financial documents together so you can make sure that you're ready to put in an offer if something seems right. You want to make sure that you're committing to a mortgage that's achievable for you and not overreaching. I think that there's been a trend in previous years, and I'm certain it's not as much the case now, but of sort of stretching your mortgage dollar, particularly in DC where housing costs are high. It's just not advisable to do so when there's a lot of uncertainty in the marketplace and in the world right now. And you want to factor all the costs in. So, you know, mortgages will be a fixed price, but insurance will go up. You'll have maintenance costs. There will be other fees associated with not just buying, but living in that home. And you want to factor that in before you make a decision on what your price point is. And then you want to think about where you want to live. Some folks are walkers and they love a pedestrian environment and don't have any interest in having a car. So public transportation is going to be really important. Other folks, where you park and where you're gonna, you know, send your kids to play and send your kids to school and how you're gonna get to work are more key considerations. So factoring not only what you're thinking of for right now, but what you're thinking about in terms of the future is also really important. And in doing all these things, you wanna start building the right team of professionals that are gonna help you make the right home purchase. And that's having a really solid mortgage broker, which should really be the first person that you start with, because they're going to help you understand what you qualify for in terms of a loan, and they're going to help you understand what your payment is going to look like and all the other costs of purchasing something. And they're going to give you what's called a pre-approval letter so that you know when you're shopping, you're able to make an offer on a property. Your real estate agent should be experienced and should be very good at navigating a more complicated and complex real estate environment where there's a lot of competition for units. Just having an agent in your title is not enough to, I think, inspire confidence. You want to do interviews, you want to check with different people around the experiences they've had, and you want a real estate agent that's interested in a long-term relationship, not a short-term transaction. And that ensures that they're going to make sure that they're being an advocate for your best interests, not necessarily for a single purchase. And then you're going to want a title company who's going to help you make sure that that transaction is completed on the administrative and financial side, and then an inspector. And that's the person who's going to come in and poke and prod at the unit and make sure that it is exactly what you want and need, or at least you're going in eyes wide open and you know what needs to be addressed in that unit before you find yourself living in it. It can often be the difference between moving forward on a property, and walking away, but it's really important, especially in this marketplace, especially with newer units, to have the time and money spent on an inspection. And then finally, when you do have an offer that's accepted, you'll have a review period if you're buying a condo or a cooperative, and you want to make sure that you study all the documents, the inspection results, you look at the insurance requirements, and make a really informed decision. So And again, you want to think about your 2, 5, and 10-year plan. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how you hone in on what is going to work for you as a place to buy. Obviously, houses are really popular right now. Everybody wants a little outdoor space. They want a little autonomy. I think people living too close together feels a little challenging right now. And there are a lot of perks to houses. In DC in particular, the biggest perk to houses is that there are a finite number of them. And anything that has a shorter supply will have a higher value over time. We cannot build more houses in DC proper, or if we could, we're choosing to buy or to build multifamily housing because it's more profitable for developers. So if there's a house and you feel like that is both in your sort of maintenance, planning, and lifestyle purview, houses tend to perform well financially more so than a condo would, because again, they're finite resources and they tend to be more functional for the long term for people. They retain value and they appreciate more. But at the same time, they're more vulnerable as assets. So you have a roof and you have neighbors and you have just more exposure and you have masonry issues. They can require more substantial maintenance needs, but they also give you more autonomy in terms of how you maintain them, which is not true of condos and cooperatives. Condos and cooperatives can have more accessible price tags. Mostly, they can also be very expensive, and they will have decreased maintenance responsibilities and needs, but they don't lack maintenance and improvement needs. So there will always be maintenance regardless of where you go and what you buy. You will never find a maintenance-free unit, even if it's brand new, and especially if it's brand new, you may find that there's more maintenance than you ever expected because it takes a little while for buildings to settle in. Condos come with fees, and those fees need to increase year over year in order to meet the financial demands of operating that association. We find that new construction, again, the standards can be poorly executed. That's for renovated houses as much as for condos. You'll find a space that looks beautiful and you can't imagine that anything would be wrong, but when you sort of peel back the layers, you find that a lot of the systems weren't installed properly. We've seen houses where the structural integrity was compromised, where insulation wasn't put in. One thing that was startling to me was seeing that they had wired new electrical wiring to old. They made it look like the wiring had been replaced when you took the cover plate on, but when you actually opened up the wall, it was all the existing knob and tube fabric wiring, which is a fire hazard. So they made a point of making it look like something was done that hadn't been done. And that is why you always want to invest in an inspector who's really thoughtful and thorough. Condos, again, there's an inventory element that will not influence in the same way buying a house. You'll see a lot of condos come online, and there will be new interests and priorities for buyers. It may be there's an interest in more amenities. We've seen condos where there's a dog included in the lobby that is a shared amenity. I think that's a weird shared amenity, but if roof decks and gyms and concierge services are something that are very favorable, then a walk-up 1-bedroom may start to depreciate or lose value over time. And so that's something you want to consider, that you cannot necessarily count on the value of your condo going up over time. And again, even inside a condo, you may find that the construction standards are poorly executed and that it will look good, but it might not be high quality construction. I've also seen a lot of toilets that had hot water hooked up to them, which is sort of a weird thing when you're using the restroom. Co-ops are pretty unique to Washington, DC and New York City. And they actually, when you buy in a co-op, you become a shareholder in a larger entity and you don't own your unit, you become a leaseholder for your unit. They're a lot more complicated in terms of their governance. They can sometimes be less expensive. They have a lot of rule and management criteria, and there are usually a lot of restrictions around whether you can lease those. And financing can be trickier for them. That said, I find that condo buildings tend to be very well maintained. They tend to be historic, and they tend to be, a lot of them are in the list of Washington best addresses. So they can be exceptional buildings, but they're a little bit quirkier. So those are kind of the 3 choices that you have in the city. And you'll want to think through all those different variables when choosing. And I'm going to pass it on to our next colleague here. Chelsea's going to talk about how to make sure your financial house is in order.
Sure. Thanks, Lisa. And great to see so many names and familiar faces and names. So in terms of buying a house, everyone knows that it is an expensive endeavor and quite possibly one of the largest investments you'll ever make. And we want to make sure that you're approaching it correctly. So as Lisa mentioned, working with a mortgage lender at the forefront will allow you to understand how much you have available before you fall in love with a property or a space or a community. And so when you're thinking about working with a company, they're going to look at your debt to income ratio. And some mortgage companies allow for higher income to debt, others require much lower. So it might be upwards of 45%, and may be as low as 36. So that is going to determine how much availability in terms of cash you will have to be able to look for homes. And all of that debt is going to include, like we have it listed, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. If you don't put a full 20% down, you will most likely be required to purchase private mortgage insurance, and that protects the mortgage holder. Doesn't protect you, but it's one of those things that they require. So that isn't a huge cost in the scheme of everything else, but is something to add to your list of things. And when you're talking to a lender, you can interview them in terms of what their requirements are and what their costs are. There are several loan programs offered in the District of Columbia. For those of you who are looking into Maryland or Virginia, there's similar programs. DC in particular, I use the DC Opens Door program to get what is it called? My down payment. So I got a down payment loan for my condo, and it's a 3-year loan, interest free. And if I live in my space for 3 years, it's written off. And so with very little legwork in order to get that done. But there are several programs. The DC Home Purchasers Assistant Program also has, I think, upwards of $80,000 for gap financing. And then the DC government also has programs specific for DC employees and first responders and teachers. So if you fit into those categories, make sure you do your research and ask your lender. For those particular programs, there are lenders that you have to work with. So if you start investigating those DC specific or Maryland or Virginia, make sure you use the right lenders. They're the ones that are going to shepherd that through. It's actually facilitated all through the lender and not through the entity. And last but not least, when you're talking to those folks, talk about FHA and VA backed loans. There might be an option for you depending on your situation, but it may limit what properties you can look at. Not all buildings, and in terms of condos and co-ops, are VA or FHA approved, meaning you can't use that money to purchase in that space. So if that's something that you have to use because that's the situation you're in, it's going to narrow down your opportunity and your selection, which is not a big deal, but something, again, to keep in mind. And when you're talking with your lender, ask all those questions, see what they can put in terms of a great package for you. And the other thing is, like, as we talk about budgets, as anyone's talked about budgets, is make sure you're really comfortable with what you're spending. We'll talk about it in a minute, but it's not just your mortgage that you have to worry about. You have to worry about repairs and maintenance. Even if you buy in a condo, there's still repairs and maintenance that you have to do to your home. There's condo fees or co-op carrying charges. And so all of that quickly adds up, and we want to make sure that everyone is really aware of what the end amount is every given month, so that you're thinking ahead. If you choose to rent, you want to make sure that whatever your costs are per month to run the unit aren't higher than your available rent option. So that's something we'll talk about later on in all of our home buying series, but it's something to just keep in mind as you're adding up all those dollar figures. And then Steph, my colleague Steph, will talk a little bit more about sort of what is involved with all those different entities.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Chelsea. That is the perfect segue. So when we talk about, you've gotten to the point where you've gotten through the loan information, you've got your team, you were successful, and you have now your house, your condo, or your co-op. What are you facing? And as Lisa mentioned at the start of the call, I work on the nest side with individual rental units. We work a lot with owners who are going to be renting out their space. And this information translates to whether you are a homeowner moving into your unit or you're going to be renting the unit to a tenant. A lot of the information is what we go over with owners. And personally, in my own house, I can speak to some repairs that I've had this year. In 1 year alone, I had a water heater, new roof, and my HVAC broke or went out right when it started to get cool. So I right now have no HVAC, but luckily I have radiators. So don't need to replace that right now. That's going to be put off into the spring. But just as a little idea of like how, potentially those costs can add up and you can move some things around. So in terms of a house, as Lisa mentioned, the costs can be a bit higher than condos, but some things to think about: pest control, landscaping, snow removal, roofing. One question we get asked a lot on the nest side is when you are having a tenant move in, what is the average that you should expect to pay for maintenance over the span of that 12 months that a tenant is in? It's the same for homeowners, $5,000 to $6,000 per year when you're talking about your basic toilet repairs, handyman work, saving, putting money aside for appliances. If they last up to 10 years, know how old the appliances are when you move into a property, know how old the roof is, get that information from the inspector and make sure that you make note of it and you make a plan for when you can expect those repairs to need to be made. Utilities, again, you're not going to, in a house versus a condo, you're not going to have potentially property on either side of you that kind of cushion the air or cushion the heat. You have a roof that you're responsible for that will make the utilities higher. In a house, you're obviously responsible for the water bill. In a condo, it works a little bit different. You're potentially going to be paying those HOA condo fees into that water bill. But again, utilities are a big part of what you want to clear up at that move-in time. Improvements and upgrades depends on the condition of the unit when you get it. But in any scenario, making sure that you're keeping that unit in good condition will make sure that down the road, and as we've talked about that 2, 3, 5, 10-year plan, if that unit is maintained and kept in good condition, it will pay off in the end. So deferred maintenance, we don't typically recommend it. We work a lot on preventative maintenance and investing in it now, obviously when you can, to make sure that that investment pays off for you down the line. With condos, as Chelsea mentioned, there's different things that are included versus a house. So for condos, you want to read the bylaws, know what that HOA is going to be paying for. Condo fees increase over time, you're paying into that. Your risk of the association being in poor financial shape when you purchase is an issue and something to be educated on. You will have special assessments if a big project in the building needs to be done. That is out of your control. So you will be responsible for paying into your condo fees or your special assessments, and you don't have the control necessarily over that like you would in a house for those repairs. And again, the difference here in terms of maintenance, a house $5,000 to $6,000 per year to budget, a condo 1 to 3. And that what will factor into that is also, again, the bylaws and where your responsibility lies versus where the HOA's responsibility lies. So making sure you know that. And then condos typically decrease in value over time. But again, we'll kind of talk about that from an investment standpoint in another session. For a co-op, again, refer back to the condo information. Co-op fees tend to be a bit higher, but do include property tax. The price tag tends to be a bit lower. You may not qualify for prevailing interest rates. Fewer lenders or specialists know the ins and outs of co-ops. So making sure that, going back to when you choose your team, that team, if you are interested in a co-op, should be very skilled in working with co-ops and understanding the ins and outs of those. Something important to remember. And then some in-unit repairs are included in fees. Pest control would be one thing in condos that sometimes is included in fees, sometimes is not. Condo common areas would be. So again, all this information is not to scare anyone away from purchasing. It is definitely will pay off in the end, hopefully. But all things to factor in when you're looking at that bottom line with what you can expect once the purchase is good. So again, not just the mortgage statement. Factor in these into kind of your monthly, because I can't stress enough, no matter what you do, whether down the line you're going to want to rent this out or you're going to want to go back to market, the better shape that unit is in, the better off you are going to be. So it's being proactive and setting yourself up for success. So I'm going to transition now to my colleague Pavan. Knowledge is power.
Knowledge is power. Absolutely. Well, thank you, Steph. So some things you want to think about when you when you know, so you've identified what you want, you got your money, you got your money together. Some things you want to think about, and our colleague Jason is going to talk about condos specifically in a second. But whenever you're going to make that purchase, some things you want to think about, but you really need to review, is you work with the title company and the lender on reviewing the closing costs. You get a settlement sheet, you get a statement beforehand that estimates fees, discloses everything you need to know. You're going to know how much money you need to bring to the table to the closing table. There's some significant fees that are going to be included on there, like the transfer taxes in DC, which are not insignificant. You're going to want to know, you don't want any surprise there. Look, there's surprises at the closing table all the time. You want to try to minimize that, especially in a condo. If you're buying mid-month, then the sellers might be paying part of the condo fees, you're paying another. You just want to make sure all of that is set forth. And again, if you really trust, ask questions and trust your team, your lender and the title company, that's going to go smoother for you. There are people in hot sellers markets that say waive the inspection. If you really want this, waive the inspection. You're going to be competing with cash offers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We do not recommend waiving the inspection. Lisa mentioned this, even in a brand new unit, actually, especially in a brand new unit, you're going to want that inspection. Look, a good real estate agent is going to be able to come up with ways for your, or might be able to come up with ways that your offer can still be competitive with an inspection. There's a lot of little techniques that they can do. And so again, if you trust your real estate agent, you're going to be able to go in with the strongest offer. For houses, condos, co-ops, you're going to get disclosure statements. You're going to want to review all the disclosure statements. I'm going to talk in a little bit later about a mistake that I made when I was purchasing one of my units because I did not review. And so that's something you're going to want to read every word. There's a lot of information, and you might want to read every word, and it's going to take a long time, and it's not really fun. But you know what? You're making a big decision. You're an adult now, and it's time to read. You're going to want to review the operating costs, like Steph mentioned. It's not just the mortgage, right? It's not just the bill. The funds that come out of your account every month are not just what's on the mortgage statement. There's utility costs, there's other operating costs, there's lots of other things. You got to think these things through. You're going to want to know what the systems are. Again, if you know that you have a HVAC unit that is at the end of its useful life, then you can plan for that. If you know you have an HVAC unit that's 6 months, you're buying into a place with the HVAC unit that's 6 months old that's still under warranty, you need to know that, because if it dies in 3 months, you have a warranty. So again, you got to really sort of think through all those different issues. You may be negotiating repairs or money back from the seller. You got to keep, you're going to want to keep track of that, so you understand, again, when closing time comes, what the deal is. This one, the next bullet point's a little more sort of, I wouldn't say vague, but you really want to think about, Lisa mentioned, are you the kind of person that has a car or doesn't have a car? Do you have kids? Might you want to have kids? Is that going to affect, are your kids going to go to public school, or are they going to go to private school? These are all considerations. In addition to the actual unit you're buying, you're going to want to look at the broader neighborhood to understand whether what you're buying fits into your 2-year, 3-year, 5-year, 10-year plan. You want a comfortable monthly mortgage. You do not want it to be the top. You do not want your mortgage payment to be the top of what you can afford. You do not want your mortgage payment to be the top of what you can afford. I'm going to say it twice so you remember it. And the reason is for the reasons that we're talking about here, that we've talked about and we will talk about. There are things that will arise, and you don't want to be in a position like Steph, where you're going to put off an HVAC repair. No, you don't want to be in a position where you can't be comfortable for something because you hadn't saved the money for it. So that's definitely something to think about. The lenders will give you the money. You will be qualified in many times for much more than what, for example, I or a friend you might talk to might recommend that you take on. And you're also, again, you're going to want to set your own mental expectations of repairs. Some people, when they buy a brand new unit, they think, oh, well, look, I'm good for 5, 6, 7 years. I'm not going to have any costs for repairs. And that's simply not true. And, actually older units, sometimes once they've settled in, they have a nice little span there where they don't actually have that many repairs. So again, a good real estate agent is going to be able to really talk, sort of talk through and work through those things with you. You're going to want to think about all of these things when you're making decisions. Again, it's not just the backsplash, right? It's all of it. So I'm going to turn the slide over to Jason now. Talk about condos and co-ops.
Thanks, Pavan, and thank you all for joining us this evening. Once you've submitted your contract, you'll be returned with a ream of papers related to the association's operations. This disclosure includes a full set of governing documents, financials, and meeting minutes, just to name a few. While this can seem overwhelming, it's a necessary evil. Take a second and ponder. You're potentially joining a business entity with a group of individuals you've never spoken with, worked with, or even shared a 4th of July beer with. To kick off your review period, I'd recommend starting with the financials. If you follow the money, you will learn the true health of the association. Investigate overages that they're experiencing. Is the association contributing to its recommended reserve contribution? Or do they even have a reserve study noting the capital components? While nothing is guaranteed, it will certainly help you prognosticate on whether an assessment increase or a special assessment is in your future. Once you've analyzed the financials, you can move on to the tangibles of living on site. What elements of the unit are considered your responsibility? Where does the condo's property coverage end and yours begin? Are there restrictions regarding having pets on site? These items are scattered across the association's governing documents. So plan accordingly and give yourself time to dive in. As we're spending more and more time at home these days, it's paramount to understand the rules of the road. An informed buyer is not a surprise buyer. Back over to you, Pavan.
Great, yeah, that's really good advice. Those like I said, those condo docs, they're long. You get a binder, you get a big binder, sometimes 2 binders. But I think starting with the financials, totally agree with that. Starting with the financials is really smart. So what is your 2-year plan, or your 3-year plan, or your 5-year plan, or your 10-year plan? You do want to think about that. I purchased my first piece of real property in 2006. I now own 3 or 4 units, and not because I'm a real estate investor. It's just because I could never get around to selling any of them. I had a unit. I bought a unit in 2003 actually. I bought one in 2003. I bought one in 2006. Then my wife had one, and then we bought a house together. So now we've got this sort of like all these units, and it actually is really great. Okay. It hasn't been without a little trouble. And by the way, one of them, we've had a condo, we've had a co-op, we've had a condo that was a condo conversion. Okay, all of them have come with challenges. All of them have come with really good opportunities, and we didn't really think through everything. Again, I'm an accidental landlord. It just sort of happened. My 2003 property, when I tried to sell it in 2006, 2007, I couldn't sell it. The market was going down. It's a co-op. I had to keep it. That's not something I planned for. Luckily, it was a co-op, and the payments were a little bit lower. I wasn't at the top of my monthly mortgage budget, and so it worked out. But if you need the rental income to make the mortgage payment every month, if and you're thinking about renting your property out in the future, you're buying it now to live in it, you're thinking of renting it, that might not be the best investment property, because you know what, vacancies happen. You know what, COVID happens. You never know what's going to happen. And so you want to be really thoughtful when you're buying a place. If you want to rent it out in the future, again, to look, maybe you look at the rental market now. Maybe you look at your mortgage payment, what your mortgage payment may be, and you look at the rental market and see whether, how much of it you could be covered. These are the kind of things you want to think about. as you when you think about moving from your starter home to turning it into an investment property, then maybe you want to think about your, what I did at least was I refinanced one of these units and I got the down payment for my forever home, right? So I was able to leverage, because I did things properly, I was able to leverage out some of the debt that I paid down on my first homes to get to where I live now. And then what Lisa would say is, well, when are you going to buy a multifamily property? I'm not an investor, but there are lots of opportunities to sort of leverage real estate. Again, I am not an investor, but this just through life scenarios, I've moved through, and these are all in DC or the DC area. I've moved through real properties. Some of you can and will, that will happen to you too. And if you're thoughtful now, you will save some of the headaches. Like, for example, one headache that I went through, actually, it was the unit that my wife bought. It wasn't my choice. Anyway, it was a condo conversion. And the condo conversion wasn't really done well. And they hadn't, it was a 20-story building, and they hadn't redone all the balconies. And so after she moved out, while we had a tenant living in it, they had to go back, redo all the balconies. It was a multi-million-dollar project. There was a special assessment assessed to all units of $13,000. And one day we get a thing in the mail that says you owe $13,000 and you have here 6 weeks to come up with the cash. That was really difficult for us. We had to take a loan. The building worked on providing that kind of, but we had to take a loan to get it. And could that have been avoided? I don't know. But I do know that when we bought all of our initial properties, we didn't think through all of the things that we've been talking today. And if you just really take the time to think these things through, I think in the end, you're gonna have a better result. And so I think I'm gonna turn this back to someone. Lisa. Lisa, you're on mute.
All right, that was a lot of information we went over in a pretty quick fashion because we wanted to leave some time open for folks to ask questions in the chat. And we're open to any conversation. We are having several other 1-hour workshops in this series, and we'll talk about investment properties. I know some folks had questions about that when we sent out the invitation, but if folks want to chat in any questions they have, Steph on the call on the Zoom is gonna jump in and let me know what they are. I
was gonna say Chelsea has the chat up, I believe.
Okay, great. No? I will talk while Chelsea's scanning to see if we have questions right now. I will chat a little bit about why new construction tends to be trickier than you would assume. And there are a couple of things to know. Is that new construction, you might say, oh, well, we've got the benefit of knowing what the plans are and how things were built, but they're actually architectural plans, and then there are as-built plans, and those are the things that unfolded in real time as the building was constructed. And a lot of times there's a swap out of materials or there's a redesign in real time, which means that your building plans may not actually reflect what's going on behind the walls, and there may be subpar materials that are used. So there might be more money spent on the things that you see and less money spent on the things that you're not seeing. And that's why we'll find that new construction can sometimes not perform nearly as well as the older spaces. And so people will ask us, they'll say, well, certainly you don't want to manage old buildings. And we say, we like that because older buildings have already revealed their problems. Whereas newer buildings, everybody's expecting to have a new car experience, but you can't drive your house to the dealer for repairs. And so you have to kind of live with the reality of what you get. And when things aren't perfect, that can be frustrating when you're buying something new. Older things, people, I think, are more emotionally prepared for things to be less than perfect. We had a question, can you discuss how condos depreciate in value over time? That is not a given. but it's more likely for a condo than it may be for a house. And in part, it is an inventory question. And we'll see the demographics and or urban dynamics change over time. And because condos are smaller in format and because they can be built quickly and you can see inventory shifts and consumer preferences, it's possible that because of that, you won't see appreciation in the same way that you might in a home. And that I think has not always been the case in Washington, D.C., because the Washington, D.C. market has been so favorable for all real estate appreciation, but there will be potential for that not to be the case going forward as we see a higher saturation of units in the marketplace, a higher demand for houses, and then the potential for people to decide to exit the city proper in favor of a more affordable area to live in, with the expectation that they may be able to commute rather than work from home rather than commute into the city. It's not a guarantee that it won't appreciate, but there is more risk of it having a depreciation in certain markets than you might have with a house. And again, houses are sort of a more finite asset. There aren't as many of them in the city.
Haley,
Yeah,
Hey,
go ahead.
I just want to jump in on that point. Another point that we talk about often is that with condos, I can use my condo again as an example. I bought it in 2006. It was built in 2000, and it was luxury at that time on U Street. And now there's been a lot of other more luxurious condos that have come online right next to it. And so all of a sudden, I'm not the luxury condo anymore. And so now that I'm renting it out, I have to think about in my mind the competition that I have. So it's not that the condo depreciated, but it's the level of rent that I would get is different than I might have expected had those new units not been built.
Yeah, the attachment to like personal preference and design and style choices in a condo are more pronounced than they may be in a house. I think that there's more expectation that you would make your own preference and changes to a home or spend money and energy renovating a home or a house versus a condo. So people will get more attached to the idea of the design elements in a condo, but then over time they will get dated and you'll be faced with wanting to factor in upgrading something that's totally functional, but doing it because it may be that the form isn't what you wanted to do, but the function is exactly what it needs to be. So dated kitchen cabinets, or you don't have the side-by-side refrigerator, but everybody else has that now. And so certain things that might give people the impression that your unit is not as attractive as another one on the market if you're needing to sell. And again, if you find yourself in a situation where you have a unit or a condo that you need to move on from, but you are not able to sell, or you can't for some reason, you want a mortgage that is not overwhelming so you can make the right choice for the right time. And that may mean making sure that you get an opportunity to rent it, but not at the top of the market, but in a price point that's really achievable, and one where someone will feel like they're getting a great deal, and then they stay in that unit for a long time, and it's a carefree relationship, and that is possible.
Lisa, we received this question a couple of times, and I think both you and Pavan can probably speak to it in terms of personal experience, but timing about when you're interested in purchasing a unit, and do you sell your unit first? Do you buy another one? Does the bank float you the money? How do you sort of leverage what you have? And so if you guys wouldn't mind spending a few minutes just chatting through that and a couple questions.
Yeah, that's a really great question. I see that someone is interested in buying a fourplex. Everybody wants a fourplex. I would like a fourplex. They're unicorns in the city, but there are a few of them. And they are a good investment if you can make the math work. I think the most important part of that question is leverage, or that's the buzzword for me. And you don't ever want to over leverage to pursue an investment. It's risky. And unless you're an entrepreneur that's really inspired and interested in that risk, and you have a really strong track record of navigating getting through that risk if things don't become favorable for you, then you want to be careful that just like you might with your primary home, not overextending for an investment either. So, you want to work with a lender that is going to help you understand what's affordable and what your investment and financing options might be. Typically, from a down payment perspective, you're going to need to put a minimum of 20% down in order to be considered eligible for financing for an investment property. And again, we're going to have a session in a few weeks that's just on looking for and managing investment property, which certainly isn't our sweet spot. But you know, because the fourplex, and like, so they ask what's the right time, because the fourplex is a unicorn, I think the right time is when you find one that's both affordable and that you qualify for. And if you can do your due diligence and kind of ask the right questions and say, how will this perform as a rental? And by performance, I mean, how much money will it make? What are your expenses going to be in addition, once you've factored in the income? Are you going to have what you call a capitalization rate? So how much are you going to make on that property from a profit perspective? Most investors are looking at wanting somewhere in the range of, you know, 8 to 12 to 15%. It's possible that you say for the first 3 years, we'll take a loss and invest in improving that property. You can't understate the amount of effort that can go into both maintaining and improving to certain standards of 4-unit building. And again, we'll review this in the buying an investor portion of the workshop series that we're going to do. But a high quality property attracts a high quality tenant. And when people are happy where they live, they make better neighbors, and better neighborhoods lead to better living experiences. And if you have a poorly maintained building, you will have a lot of headaches. So you want to factor in having a really high quality space, which doesn't mean it needs to be expensive. It just needs to be an excellent repair, and it should be a place that people really want to call home. That is when you have the best investment experience. And finding a good lender who is comfortable in the investment lending space is always really important. We'll have a one-pager that we'll follow up with folks on this, and then we'll also reach out with information on the investment series that we're going to do. Pavan, did you have anything that you would add to that?
No, Chelsea, was there also part of that question did that answer the question, or was there another part of that question too?
It's a little bit also about, like, if you aren't looking for an investment property, you're just looking to either upgrade from a 1-bedroom maybe to a 2-bedroom or to a house. And so do you sell your condo first and then use that money, or will the bank float the money for owner occupied?
I will say this, right? So the less contingencies you can have when you're going into sale, the better you're going to be. So if you have a contingency that you need to sell your place first, I mean, in this market, that may not work out. You know what I'm seeing a lot of people do? I'm seeing a lot of people move into Airbnbs for traditionally, right? You have to move into a lease, you get signed a 1-year lease, and people didn't want to do that in between. But now what you can do is you can sell your place, move into an Airbnb, put your stuff in a pod, and then go and make your offer on the new place you want. I think there's a timing associated with it. I mean, there's definitely a real estate market timing in DC and anywhere. Like, we're going into a slow period for the DC market. That is not to say that there aren't going to be things for sale, but if you want to time all of this right, you probably want to think about maybe selling your place in the hot spring market and buying in the hot fall market or something like that. Once again, I don't think we can stress this enough. A good real estate agent, you start talking to them early, right? A year before you want to sell, and they will plan that all out with you. I love what Lisa said, is that you don't want, I mean, it's really ideal to have a real estate agent that's looking for a long-term relationship, not just this, let's do this deal and then you may never see them again. So that's what I would say.
To touch on that, Pavan, because you kind of answered this from the sales side, we had a question about how far in advance you should be seriously going to look at houses in this type of a market, which I think is a good question.
I think provided you're pre-approved and you're clear on what your spending parameters are, I think probably 2 to 3 months out makes sense. It can take a while, but you don't want to have something pop up that you really want and then you're not ready for. That's a miserable situation. So you want to be able to sort of strike while the iron's hot and move on something. If you're gonna pre-shop, which is like a DC pastime now, along with walking around neighborhoods, you know, I think that makes sense to get a sense of what the market looks like, or what, you know, condo fees are like from building to building, or, you know, and sort of understand trends. But I think 2 to 3 months out is appropriate. And again, you know, depending on the area that you're interested in living in, some inventory will definitely adjust depending on where you want to be. Someone asked, you know, when is there a good time to buy? You know, I find that it's sort of a chicken and an egg. People will say, don't buy in a hot market because everything's more expensive, but when everything's more expensive, there's greater inventory. So you have more choices, but there will be fewer opportunities to get a good deal. In the heart of winter, especially around 3-day weekends, those tend to be really nice times to look and make offers, when fewer people are going to open houses, when people are putting a pause on their home buying efforts. You can tend to slide in there, get an offer in, and get a deal done when people really aren't paying attention. So I really like the idea of 3-day weekends, holidays, Christmas, being good times to pick up something that other people might not have noticed. So that's a little bit of an insider tip there. Somebody said refinances, lessons learned, timing. You know, refinancing now is all about getting on the lender's dance card. Everybody who owns anything is in the middle of refinancing it. If it's an investment property, you will find that it is harder to do so because lenders are not looking as favorably on investment property, because it is a riskier bet for them right now. However, you know, you want to get in the queue. Refinancing, and this reminds me that the nuances of having a condo and why you need to be really thoughtful if you buy a condo is that your refinance process will be very much tied to the board and the governance of that building, and the financial wellness of that building. A well-managed building generates a more valuable unit, and you want to buy in a building that's well managed. So the bank is going to review the financial documents for that building. So if your building has a high delinquency rate, or does not have appropriate reserves, or has many special assessments, or there are other concerns from a governance perspective, or a lawsuit, it's possible you will not be able to get refinancing through. So that's something to flag. It's a good reason why you want to do a lot of due diligence on those condos ahead of time. Somebody asked about resources for first-time home buyers. We'll include that in the one-pager that we'll follow up with, but Chelsea did touch on there are a lot of different competing programs in DC that help people with home buying assistance, whether that be waiving down payment assistance. There are a lot of affordable dwelling units in the city. Most of the developers have to sign a covenant with the city that requires them to offer a certain number of units that are open to buyers in a certain income range, which is not particularly low. So oftentimes they'll be in a 6-figure income range because it's Washington, D.C. So there can be a lot of opportunities there. I will offer that almost all of those units are in the lower level because the developers are not carving out the penthouse for the affordable units that they have to offer. So there will be, and if you're ever buying a lower level anything, you want to be thoughtful about the risks of water. And that is a DC reality that anyone living in a lower level is probably going to face at some point. So when you're buying and thinking through the pros and cons of that, think about what floor the unit is on. And for folks that are looking at condos that are high amenity typically leads to higher fees. And things like elevators break down. So the more slim down the features are in a condo, the more lean that condo building's budget's going to be. And then the likelihood of special assessments and other fees that are a surprise will be lower as well.
We had another question on, do we have any advice on how to tell between a less than ideal renovation versus a quality one?
There are certain, honestly, the inspection is gonna help you define whether or not the quality is there. And you know, there can be simple things like look at the electrical panel. If it's a new renovation and the electrical panel is not marked, someone didn't bother to take the time to do that properly. If the building is new or the unit is new, you should have documentation on every contractor that did that work, and you should have warranty materials for everything in that unit. If you don't have those things, I would be concerned. So you want to see documentation for the renovation itself. You want to be able to reference the warranty period, and there should be a 2-year warranty period if you're buying a new unit, which is helpful, but it can sometimes be a fight to get them to honor the warranty and to get the developer to honor the warranty. If it's a known developer, Martin Ditto in the market is known for high quality units. You kind of know what you're getting. It's a name brand, you know where to find them. If it's an LLC that you've never heard of and it's owned by 4 people and they're just doing this one-off property, that's a unit, that's a building, that's a property, it's an investment you want to spend a lot of time studying before you jump on it, because it probably looks great, but there's probably some uncertainty around what really lies behind the walls.
Any guidance, and I know I want to be conscious of time. We have a few minutes left. Any guidance on, we talked a lot about picking your team at the beginning. One question on how to guidance for finding a good lender, but tips on how to kind of assemble that team.
Ask your community. So you have a village of people that you trust when you pick a restaurant, or you're trying to figure out where to go to vacation, and I'm sure you have that one friend who has like the 10-page guide before they go to the place they're visiting. Like, that's the person you want to ask for a real estate recommendation or an agent recommendation, is the person that checks references, asks questions about, you know, how do you choose what you're going to show me? If you have a real estate agent that says, oh, you just look online and tell me what you might want to see, or you go to the showings yourself, that's not a good advocate. That's someone that's just getting, again, to that transaction. You want an agent that has a track record of being a thoughtful partner for a potential buyer and a potential seller for the entire time they're in the marketplace. So when a perfect scenario is an agent that you're comfortable buying with and then later selling with and then later buying with. And a good agent will try and establish that relationship, and they will steer you away from a property that isn't going to be a good fit, that might be too expensive. They're not going to make you feel pushed. They're going to be your partner. And getting a sense of that, and work with someone you like. If you don't like them, you're not going to enjoy the transaction. Same with the lender. The lender is going to have a lot of questions, and you're going to have all your financial ducks in a row. They're going to want to know your income statements. They want to see your taxes. They want to see debt. They want to see bank statements. They want to see credit card statements. So, you know, you and your lender are going to get real intimate really quickly, and pick somebody that you like. And now that everybody is refinancing, somebody has somebody they like. You know, asking for those referrals and recommendations is really, and don't be shy about interviewing 2 to 3 people in each of those categories. When it gets to the inspection stage, you should be able to rely on a good real estate agent to pair you with an inspector that's able to come in and do that. If you are buying a condo, do not just have the unit inspected. You need to ask that inspector to do a walkthrough of the entire building. You're not just buying one unit, you're buying a percentage of the entire building, which includes the landscaping, the roof, the walls, and you want to make sure you have an understanding of what the status of that whole envelope is when buying. So do your due diligence on the agent and the lender, and then a lot of the other professionals should fall into place from there.
Great. Those are all the questions on my end. Did anyone else see any others come through? I think we're like right on time, which is amazing. 6 o'clock on the dot.
I didn't get to see faces. I saw a lot of really great names. It's really a pleasure to be able to offer this programming for folks. You know, we really love what we do, and we hope that what we've learned over the years has been helpful to all of you as you navigate this home buying experience, or maybe not at the end of this call. But we're going to continue this series, and we'll follow up by the end of the week with some resources that'll be helpful. And we appreciate your time. It was really fantastic to enjoy an hour in the late day with you all. So thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you.